Ginter, and today we're going to go through some changes we've made to our purchase agreement. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll walk through that document together now. Okay, so this purchase agreement probably looks pretty familiar to you. Oh, sorry, scratch that. Okay, this purchase agreement should look pretty familiar to you. We're going to talk through a couple of changes that we've made. One of them has to do with commission and settlement stuff, and the other one has to do with earnest money. Just kind of saw it as a good opportunity to make this change as well, because we've had a couple of situations with earnest money where it hasn't been clear. So we want to wrap that up as well. So first page, this is where the earnest money change really is. Right here on line 25, where it says payable to escrow agent. That used to say payable to escrow agent or broker. We've taken broker out. It doesn't get used much, and it created some ambiguity around where the earnest money was supposed to be. And in scenarios where it didn't get deposited and there was some fight over it, that ambiguity wasn't helpful in the process. So that's why we took it out. In the 1 in 1,000 scenario where you've got a seller that's requiring earnest money to be held by either the listing broker or the buyer's broker, you can simply put a strike through where it says escrow agent, make a little text box, and just write in where the earnest money is going to go. If it's going to go to one of the two brokers, or in a really weird scenario where it's going to an attorney of some kind or something, you could write that in. So then you'll see down below that where there used to be a checkbox where you check off either note or check. We've just removed those options altogether, primarily because we're not going to use notes anymore. Agents don't use them much. We're going to take them out of the system altogether. Notes also create a little bit of ambiguity around when earnest money needs to be deposited based on if you did or didn't use a note. So now it's very clear. It just says it needs to be at the depository within 4 days of acceptance. There's no need for notes or anything like that anymore. And the option for agents to check the checkbox was pretty much never happening because agents weren't collecting a check at the time of writing an offer. That's not a normal thing anymore like it used to be. That's why it's been in there for so long, because that used to be normal. Then we will scroll down to the bottom here, and you'll see a couple of changes at the very end. You'll notice there's no more, that acceptance paragraph that talked about commission is no longer there. The other thing you'll notice is no longer there is the deposit receipt, which was, again, another earnest money problem where agents were checking, because they were often checking that earnest money was received at the time of writing an offer and then just stating that it was a check made out to the escrow agent. And truthfully, what that does is it says that the agent has the check. And then when it doesn't get deposited and the deal falls apart, that line in the contract was problematic. So we've just removed it because, again, it's not necessary anymore, because agents don't need to reference a deposit receipt at the time of offer, because we're really just not collecting it at the time of offer anymore. We're collecting it at the time of acceptance or after. So that's been removed. Now, the commission stuff, which is the stuff this is really all about, I guess. You'll notice there's no more language, like I said. Our purchase agreement between buyer and seller is still a 6-page document, just like it always has been. It did get a little shorter, you'll notice. Page 6 doesn't have a whole lot on it anymore, where all of this stuff used to be on page 6, and it is no longer. Now, the commission is going to go on what feels like the 7th page of the purchase agreement, but it is actually a separate document altogether. We are only attaching it to the purchase agreement to ensure that it doesn't get forgotten, right? So that agents will always see this in here. We thought it would be much easier for you guys if we've got it in there as opposed to a separate document you've got to make sure you have in your loop or in the envelope, whether you're using Outlook or DocuSign. So this last page now, the only purpose of it is to disclose buyer broker compensation and where it's coming from. So you'll see right at the top there, all the players involved: buyer, seller, buyer broker, listing broker, all named. Then below that, the 3 sources that a buyer broker can be paid commission. the seller, the listing brokerage, and the buyer, all named right there. So you'd have three different amounts. In some scenarios, it's going to all come from the seller. In some scenarios, it's going to all come from the listing broker. In some scenarios, it might all come from the buyer. There could also be scenarios where there's numbers on all three of these lines. And then down below, so you're just creating a math, an addition problem here, where you're going to put whatever numbers each of these people are putting in to the pot to pay the buyer's broker, and then total buyer broker compensation. One thing that is important is that you do not forget that additional commission should go on one of these lines. So if the buyer's not paying any of the commission that we've always referred to as the buyer commission, you'd still put the 249 on that buyer, because that is commission. Even though there are times where agents call it administrative fees or things like that, which you should never do. It should always be called additional commission. So that number, if the buyer's not paying any of your commission, they're still paying that additional commission fee. So that would go on here, so that the number including your additional commission fee is what would go on line 15. So if just a basic example, if you're charging the 249 and the commission's $6,500, then you would be at 6749 is what this bottom line should say. It wouldn't say 6,500. If the seller's paying the 6,500, 249 would go on the buyer, and then you'd add that. And then all parties do sign this, and that wraps it up. So this is really the only change made for settlement purposes. That's in addition. Obviously, we took some things out, but the only addition is now just this buyer brokerage compensation disclosure. So that is it. If you guys have any questions about this, I'm certainly always here to help and make sure you're clear on what to do and what not to do. I'd much rather talk through it before you do it than after you do it. So if you're hesitant, please reach out. I'm always here to help. Thanks so much for watching, guys.